we're going to talk a little bit about sources. Sources are probably one of the most important aspects of doing family history work because sources help us to find or discover things about our ancestors. They help us to find people who are missing from our family tree. And most importantly, they help us to verify that the things that we are seeing already in family tree are correct. We're working on a one world tree here, and so lots of information has been added by lots of different people, and we can only know if that information is correct if there is a source to back up that information. And I'm going to focus a little bit on using sources to verify that the information that we see is correct in family tree. That's really one of the first steps we want to do, is make sure that what we see is correct. Because if we start doing family history work on a family that doesn't really belong in our part of the tree, we've kind of been spinning our wheels. So let's take a look here at some sources. And one of the cool things about family tree is that you can attach sources easily to individuals. So when you find a source that proves a birth date or a death date or a marriage date or that a relationship exists, you can attach that source to that individual, and that way everyone knows that the information is correct. So I'm in the landscape part of my family tree, and I've expanded out a line a little bit here just to get a broader picture. And looking at my tree, how do I know that the people that I'm seeing here are correct? How do I know that Richard Winter, for example, was born in 1822 and died in 1890? How do I know that he married not just a Mary Norman, but also a Mary Close? How do I know that the children that are listed here are his children? So that's where I would want to look at sources to make sure that all of this information that I see here is correct. And the first place I'd want to go before I start searching for sources is to see which sources have already been attached to him in family tree. So I'm going to go ahead and click on his name, and I will get his summary card. And just from this summary card, I can see that there are 16 sources that have already been attached to him. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this link that says sources here. And it opened up his person page in family tree, and it scrolled me right down to the sources section. So here are those 16 sources that are in family tree. And I want to kind of take a look at these sources to see if they truly do back up the information that I see up here in his person page. So let's take a look at some of the different kinds of sources that exist and that can be attached. So the first one here is a christening record. When I click on the link, the source opens up, and I can see here who attached the source. I can see a reason why they attached the source. I can see a citation where the original source can be found. And then I have a link here. Now this particular source comes from Family Search, and it has the Family Search icon on there. And I can go ahead and click on this link, and it opens up a new tab in my browser, and it takes me into the search part of Family Search, and I get to see the index of the record that's attached. When you go here, it will put this little banner at the top of the screen. This just kind of reminds me who I was looking at in family tree, so I know what information I want to verify. This just gives me a little kind of synopsis, a birth date, a death date, who the parents are listed in family tree, and who the spouse is. And then here's the record. This is basically the index of the record, the facts that were pulled from it. And for this particular record, it's from the England Birth and Christenings. And it shows me that there was a Richard Winter christened on this date in this part of England, and the parents that were listed on the christening record were a William Winter and a Helen. And of course, this information all matches up with what's here. And unfortunately, there's no actual image available for this particular record. I can't go and look at the original. But I do know that it has been attached because this link up here says review attachments. And that's really all I know about the record. Okay, but that seems to prove, or at least back up some of this information. So I'm going to go ahead and close out the source. Let's look and see what the christening date. Here's that christening date that was listed on from the source. If I open this christening, there should be a tag to that christening record, but there isn't. You can tag a record. Let's tag this. Let's click tag event and let's click christening and click tag, because this is a source for his christening. It proves that the christening date is correct. Now when I open up christening, I see a link to that source. So that's how you tag sources. A lot of the sources have automatic tags. I guess that one did not. All right, let's look at another source. The next source down is a parish record. And again, I open it. I can see who created the source. I can see if there would be a reason. There's no reason here. A citation and then a link. Let's go ahead and open up the source. Again, it's taking me to the search part of Family Search. And here is an index of the record, the basic facts. It's a Richard Winter marrying a Mary Norman on this date in Derbyshire, England. It also lists on here the father, William Winter, which matches up, and Mary Norman's father was James Norman. This particular record does have an image, and I can click on it here, and then I can use my roller to make it bigger and find where they are on the record. Here they are on the record. This is their marriage record. They were married on the 16th of July in 1843. I've got their names. I can see that neither one of them had been married before. These say bachelor and spinster, not widow or widower. I can see that Richard Winter is currently working as a needlemaker. And then, of course, I can see the father's names, which we saw in the index. I love this because it has their actual signatures here on the record. So that's a fun source to see. And so that record verifies this marriage information right here between Richard Winter and Mary Norman. And it also verifies the relationship between a Richard Winter and William Winter. All right, let's look at another source. This one is the same record, similar record, England marriages. So here is the England and Wales 1851 census. Let's take a look at that. So again, I just click on the link, tab opens up, and I will get an index of the record. It's kind of taking its time here today. So here's the record. For this particular one, it was indexed as individuals, so I'm only seeing Richard Winter. I'm not seeing who else is there in the household. And Family Search does not have a digital image of the record. However, one of their partner sites, Find My Past, does have an image, and I can go visit that site. And because I have my free account, which we can get as members of the church, I can go and see the record. So here is the 1851 England census. And here they are on the census. Richard Winter, who is a needlemaker, Appleby Lester, wife Mary, son William, son John Thomas, son Richard. So we can see how old they are, so we can estimate their birth years. We can see where they were born, and a lot of times for the England records, this is where they were christened. And so this gives us a lot of information that we can verify in Family Tree. Let's go look at our tree. So here's William Winter. Now, we do know that Mary Norman died in 1846, and then Richard Winter married another Mary in 1847, a Mary Close. And that's the Mary we're seeing in this 51 census. We're also seeing William, we're seeing John Thomas, and we're seeing Richard. And I can even look at Mary Close's card, and she was born in Bruntingthorpe, Leicester, according to what's in Family Tree. And if I go back to the 1851 census for Mary, she is listed as being born in Bruntingthorpe, Leicester as well. All right, so just again, using sources to help us verify our information. All right, let's look at another source. So let's look at the 1871 census. And again, I can click the link. Taking me into the search part. And then for this particular record, more was indexed, more of the information was indexed, and all of the relationships that were in the census record were also indexed, so they're all there. But again, I can go and look at this in the actual census record and verify the information. Again, here is a Richard Winter as a needlemaker. This time he lists his birthplace as Birds Hill, Derbyshire, which is interesting. It's a little different than the Appleby Leicester that we saw before. Here's Mary, which is still Bruntingthorpe, Leicester, and then Richard. We have a Mary Jane, George, Charles, Annie, Kate, Arthur, and then a lodger there. So great information that we can see from this particular source. All right. Now, a couple of these are just records where Richard Winter is mentioned in the record. So it doesn't give any more information than just to verify that he is somehow related. So let's pick this record right here. This is a death record for his daughter Annie. And I'm going to go ahead and open the record. And it has a little bit of again, an index. This was a death record, so it usually listed the parents. And so let's go ahead and find her portion of this death record here. She is Annie Giles. And here we can see name of father, Richard Winter, and maiden name of mother, Mary Close. So that just verifies. It doesn't really tell us any information necessarily about Richard Winter himself. It just verifies the relationship between him and this particular child. So these are just a few of the types of records that might be attached to Family Search. And so one of the first things that you should do when you are exploring your family tree is to look at the sources that are attached. Take a look at the actual sources, make sure that they verify the information and that the information that you see based on those records is correct.